Heartbeat Radio 104.1 FM.
We plan when we get married. We plan when we buy a car, a house, and when we have our children. We even plan how we save and when we want to retire. Throughout life, we pre-plan for most important things. Doesn't it make sense to do the same for our funeral arrangements? It may seem unpleasant, but it's just good planning. With expert advice from Belgroves' family of professionals, they can help. Call or visit them first in San Fernando, Point Fortin, Chaguanas, Trin City, and Tobago. Or check their website, www.belgroves.com. Or call them 223-2178, 223-2178.
And we'd like to say a very special thank you to Belgroves for putting this segment together for us. And we've been having it for quite the past few weeks. I believe we started this since March. And there is yet still so much to talk about. And on the phone with us today, we have our very special guest. But unfortunately, she has not been able to be in studio with us because of the current situation regarding social distancing and COVID-19 and the new regulations that have been implemented for many people. So on the line with us, we do have Dr. Jennifer Rouse. She is the former Director, Division of Aging in the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and a gerontologist, which means that she has dove into the world of the aging population and all the psychosocial and economic standpoints that come from that. So good morning, Dr. Rouse. Thank you for being here with us again for yet another segment.
A pleasant morning to you, our listeners, and to the Belgrove family.
And what I love about having our conversation this morning is that you sound very well.
Yes,
And
I am.
It has been a concern for
I
a lot
always
of us.
affirm my wellness.
Yes.
It's a kind of an auto-suggestion I give myself, not to fool myself, but to just endorse my well-being.
And that's something that we completely admire and that we appreciate in today's world, because we have been filled with a lot of fear. And like you mentioned, you lost a colleague because
Yes, I did.
Yes, and then everyone has lost, maybe not even specifically to COVID-19, but different illnesses that have been going around. I lost a family member as well a week ago, and it has been a very trying time. So we're very happy to have you on the phone with us today. And we remind our listeners that you're always invited to give us the feedback and ask those questions. So after this, we can take your calls while we are conducting this segment, but you can call us at 222-3104 and give us your questions, give us your feedback, let us know anything that you would like us to talk about. And so when we're prepping for the next program, we can do that. So as we jump into today's conversation, I really want to continue on the ledge from which we spoke about last week. And for those of us who are now tuning in, or this is completely new to you, we have been journeying along the, I won't say pre-planning, but the planning of aging and getting past retirement, and then COVID-19 just hit us like lightning, and we didn't quite know what to expect. And now we've been in this world trying to deal with it and all of the problems associated. And so one of those problems has been the fact that a lot of stories are coming up and a lot of publishings are coming up with elderly abuse happening in the homes and even in normal living situation. So I really want you to highlight that to us and how we could help this entire situation.
Yes, and one key point we had mentioned and needs to be reiterated is the fact that some of the elder abuse is intended, deliberate, and some cases are unintended, where just because of the stress of the person, whether it's the relative or the caregiver, who has their own, because many times the person that is forgotten in the whole picture is the caregiver. And, you have to understand, you cannot give what you don't have. You have to come from a place where what we call your emotional bank is in a positive place, is in a caring place, before you administer to another. And that is whether it's aging, whether it's an elder, whether it's an infant, regardless. You cannot give what you don't have. And also in the equation of giving, where that caregiver comes to attend, administer care, the receiver, if the receiver is negative, very angry, very irritable, very miserable, fretful, negative, it means the equation is not complete.
And you gave us a scenario when we spoke last week talking about one of those instances in those high tension homes where maybe
Exactly.
a woman is
because
young
we left
and
it on a
she's-
dotted line.
Yes, and
where we
she's-
painted the scenario and we said, here is this young mother, 40, who has 2 children, a teenage son who is out of school now, and a young daughter who is about 5 or 6. And what I should have mentioned to make it a little more realistic, that daughter could have been on the school feeding program.
Yes.
And Granny, their Granny, which is the adult's mother, is home as well. And we have this scenario where the daughter, who is the mother of the 2 children, who used to work at the restaurant, which has now closed because of COVID. So 2 incomes are knocked out immediately. One from the young mother and one from the pensioner who did not receive her check because she does not have direct deposit and gets her check in the mail. Hasn't arrived. So the tensions that are happening in that household, because the young mother who is 40 has to now do homeschool with the 5-year-old and dietary needs, just in case her mom might be diabetic or with one of the non-communicable chronic illnesses, her dietary needs will be different to the rest of the household. So here is this restaurant worker who is now home through no fault of her own, who is tense, who is anxious, who is stressful in the same way, and maybe more so in her mother, and the dynamic of that energy in the household. And then a little 5-year-old, you cannot just say, sit down, because I said so. They are very active, they would want to go outside, they want to play, because you are saying stay indoors. We're not sure what the area space is like in the living arrangements.
Yes.
And because now of this compressed area and how infectious this COVID virus is, Granny should no longer be just in the living room with everybody, just because it's family. She should now be in her bedroom most of the time and with the door closed, because persons could be coughing, sneezing, as they are accustomed doing when they're all together. But now, because of the asymptomatic nature of this virus, daughter could have it from being in the restaurant, from clients and God knows who else, and she's asymptomatic and doesn't know, and she's serving everybody. So it means that where her mother is concerned, who is now aged and in the vulnerable group, she would have to attire herself now with the mask and the washing of hands, everything that she touches. Make sure all counters in the kitchen are disinfected, whether with vinegar or bleach, light bleach. She has to have gloves on. Everything that she handles and passes to her mother. So that is an added task.
And I want to mention as well, you spoke about the fact that the little one probably wants to go outside and play.
Yes,
because their
exactly.
environment has been disrupted. Their daily routine is no longer what they have known it to be.
Nope.
And the same thing applies for the grandmother in this situation.
Exactly. And let us say that the grandmother and the little granddaughter are very close.
Yes.
Sitting on her lap, talking to her all day. And the little child is so happy to be home, to be with her more, but then not understanding the nature of the stress of just those movements that are not always supervised. You follow?
Yes.
And in her little world, she wouldn't understand, why are you preventing me from cuddling my granny, sitting on her lap, playing with her?
So there's
All
this
of this,
emotional
you see?
withdrawal that's happening in addition to the tension that arises in the household.
I'm getting a slight crackling sound, and I don't know if it's coming from your end, but your transmission is a bit broken.
Okay, can you hear us well? Because we
I'm
hear you
hearing a
perfectly.
little better.
Okay.
Yes.
I hope that we can continue hearing you well, because this has been going so well, and I don't want us
Yes,
to miss this conversation.
you're now very clear.
Okay,
Right,
great.
great. Yes, and as I mentioned to you, that was just one caveat.
Yes.
Another one that we have to understand too is that among our seniors, you can have, as happened in a case, where the elderly couple, they have had one child, a son, who lived with them all his life. He never married, has no children, and he stayed with them. The elderly couple is now, the father is 90, who suffers with his heart, and he's a bit infirm. And his mother, that which is the father's wife, she's about 85, and she's in the early stages of dementia. And the son has been their caregiver. Well, he was always there with them as a companion, but now he's now a caregiver.
Yes.
And at 70, age 70, the son died. Now,
That's
this is a real situation
That's a
I had
dynamic that a lot of
experienced,
people
yeah?
don't look into, but it's very true and very likely.
But to make it relevant to what we discussed, and let's say in a caveat, now he didn't die, but he got infected from going to the grocery. Remember, he's the sole person that is between them in the house and the outside world. So he does the grocery and everything. So when he went to do the supermarket, the market and everywhere else, he picked up the germ, didn't know, and came back home with it. Tested, just started with the drying, the coughing and the whatever, but took a little precaution from his parents, but then his breathing started to change. And he goes and he finds out he's positive. Now, the moment you are deemed positive, you are removed from that house. So the isolation begins. So the two parents, who are already very senior and both infirm, the main thing with persons in dementia, you cannot just change their environment or their living arrangement, because they get totally disoriented. Some of them even become violent if you decide you are sending a stranger to see what's happening, because they feel fearful, and that fear manifests itself in a violent way. And the son, you're listening to the dynamic.
Oh, yes.
The son now, who is more scared than ever, because he now is scared, anxiety, who is going to see about his just the fear. And I remember this was pointed out in the Ebola cases when it hit Africa. The fear alone from those who weren't sure if they had it was part of the way that some died. Just from the fear. They didn't even know if they had it yet, but just being in the environment of those that had it.
And then
That was what killed them.
Looking at this from the perspective of the elderly abuse situation, a lot of people get afraid and become afraid naturally when they see or they start witnessing signs of their parents' first stages of Alzheimer's. Maybe they forgot their keys somewhere, or they forgot something that seemed very menial that they should know. And you're not just upset with them because they put these keys in the fridge, but because you are afraid that now your parent is going to go through a transition into a different stage in life, which causes a lot of tension in a lot of people generally as well. So not only is there the fear of a parent getting sick or you getting sick, but now there's also, naturally, without the virus being in the picture, there are these existing fears where people have been shown to treat a parent badly because they are afraid of losing them. It's a very strange dynamic how that seems to come about or how that works, but there is that fear of loss, and thus there is hostility.
Right, and some even fall into the category of the unintended abuse.
Yes.
Because remember, they have their caseload, whether it is from the office, whether it is the responsibility in the household. Don't forget income. Income is always a critical part.
Can you share with us what different types of abuse there are?
Oh, yes. You can have verbal abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, medical abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, and self-neglect. And I think we hinted at self-neglect in an earlier episode, where sometimes some of our seniors who live alone, which is quite a significant number of them, more in the females than in the males, than their male counterparts. And when they are alone, gradually they start saying, well, I don't have to go out, especially now that they're shut in. Why should I bathe? And they start there. That's how it begins, very subliminally, very subtly. And then they said, well, do I need to cook? And well, worse yet, now that restaurants are closed, where they could have even called for a KFC or called for some caterer to deliver, that stopped. So they may like, look, I'll just eat some Cricks biscuits and some cheese. You see? And the diet begins to drop. And in the case of the first caveat, where the pension check hasn't come, she now has to buy her eye drops and her hypertension tablets or high blood pressure tablets as a way of controlling this. And as you might have heard in the media, in the news, quite a number of the persons who suffer with lupus cannot get their drug, hydrochloroquine, I think it is, and may not be pronouncing it correctly. That is short on the market because people hoarded it, thinking that that was the miracle elixir to cure this in case they got the symptoms.
Yes.
So that anxiety, because and in the case of lupus and these illnesses, it's not just a matter of anxiety for not getting it. If they do not get that pill after 2 days or 3 days,
it
lupus is full blown.
Yes.
So these are the controlling medical. And so what happens in medical abuse, the intended ones, is when the caregiver or whoever is the relative seeing about you, for especially the ones who need to be supervised, and some of the elders themselves get so tired of taking tablets and the whole regimen of taking, because remember, they don't just take one a day. Some of them take about 7 a day for different things, because we spoke about many of them having comorbidities, meaning not just one type of sickness. They have multiple. And so all of that ravages the body. So they have to take these medications to not only boost the immune system, but to keep to support them in their life of being independent still. Yes. Because they, just to be infirm and have everybody to be dependent on is not very good. So these tablets are to help them retain a sense of independence. So, but it could be very routine, and some of them just get absent, not necessarily absent-minded. They just say, "Oh Lord, to take that again," and they just get delinquent. But when you have to hear now that some are hoarding this who have no ailment and just went on a hoax, as we would call it, and denying now the ones who really do need it.
Yes.
But then there are carers who, because of their ulterior motives or they have their own agenda, and most of the time when I was at work, the abuse was on property. Property falls under financial abuse. They want the house. They want the house.
Yes.
So some of them take the adult, especially if they're in early cases of Alzheimer's, and they don't place, they actually put them in a home. And they just abandon them there. And they start maneuvering and manipulating all the records and whatever so that they could deem themselves, especially if they have power of attorney over the relative. While that relative is still alive, some of them put up the property for sale, advertise it, and they put the relative in a home so that there's no interference. And that all of that is legal because they have the power of attorney.
And all of these are part of the
legal issues we have to discuss later on the different kinds of powers of attorney.
If I can interject as well, all of this is happening when nothing has been put in place by the individual. Nothing is stating this house is mine.
So that's why I say that's a whole other discussion, because we still have, that is prevailing in Trinidad and Tobago, the taboo on making a will. A lot of attention, and especially if like one of the spouses, an elderly couple, if one of the partners says, I think you should make a will, especially to if the wife asks it of the husband, and his first reply is, you're getting a premonition that they're going to die or what, or he might just say what you think are going on dead. And that's it right there, no further. And don't ask again. And then also too is another form of fear, is another expression of fear, because it reminds the person then or the spouse, you are nearer your mortality than your vitality. And that's how, and all of that mental imaging has to change, because one has to understand that dying is part of living. But how you die is very much determined by how you live.
Precisely.
So if you become grumpy and miserable and frightened and fearful and always angry and constantly dwelling on the past, which you cannot change. Remember when we spoke about the serenity prayer? Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are some who stay stuck in the past, and nothing you could do could move them to understand they're still growing, they're still adapting, they're still relinquishing some things that they now realize they cannot do the same way, and replace it with new ways of doing something.
What I want to reiterate from what you just said as well is that a lot of those negative personalities that come from the aging population is due because of the fact that they refuse to have that silver lining perspective, and that they rather look at things from the negative standpoint. I'm at the age where a lot of my loved ones have passed on, or this is different from what I usually like. This isn't what I like to eat, and this person makes this for me every day, instead of thinking, wow, I can't believe I'm still alive, that I've made it this far in comparison to my loved ones and my counterparts, and that I have a place to stay and that I have a meal. And it's all about changing that conversation as well. So I'm not saying that there is or any justification for abuse in a situation where someone is grumpy and negative and it's causing tension in the home, but I'm also saying as well that we can change our personalities, both the abuser and the individual who is causing tension in the home.
Exactly. Both have to and the first step of it is to, you see that whole question of self-awareness?
Yes.
What another way of saying own it. Own it. Once you own it and say, I real miserable, and you, the person, don't feel good with it either. That's the thing about it. It is not a comforting feel. And because of being shut in now, everything could just explode, because the person who was even predisposed or oriented to be grumpy or miserable, it will be full-blown now, because they have time. They have time. And I always would say on my lectures, because people tend to have these myths about what aging looks like, that old people miserable, they're forgetful, they have all these negative derogatory terms. But I would always remind them, a miserable old person was miserable long before.
Precisely.
It's just that they get better at it now because they have more time.
And that they care a little bit less.
And people would laugh, but it is a serious thing.
And they care less as time goes by as well. They're at that point where they don't necessarily have to take into consideration any feedback from anyone. So before we continue on, I know our time is definitely gone because we're already...
you asked pertinent questions, which have to tease out a little more.
What I want you to tell us before you leave today, Dr. Rouse, is that if we are noticing someone, or we have an inkling that someone that we know, an elderly person, is going through abuse, or that maybe we are the abuser, sometimes we just have to admit it. How can we seek help for the individual who is being abused?
And I'm glad you are ending on this note, because at the Division of Aging, which has the toll-free number 800-6742, it is only through the public, neighbors, persons visiting a home to see a relative and notice other things when they visit a home. That's how we used to get the cases. And we would have to label those the reported cases, because there's a significant number of unreported as well as underreported reports on elder abuse in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Because we want to know, we feel good when we say take care of our elders, but there is a whole number of statistics that we don't have a feel on. And so that is important, that we understand that the whole question of elder abuse and the different types, as you asked, and you have to flesh that out, because you have to own the situation you are in before you can, because you have to know something is wrong before you can begin now to ameliorate the situation and make yourself better and come back into a state of well-being. But when you are in a state of denial, then that is the person on the outside will be talking to air, because you're not hearing, you're not accepting it, you're not taking ownership of it, that as you made your bed, so shall you lie. It is an equation.
I want us to hold on that topic because we do have to wrap up, but this is a great segue into our next conversation.
Yes, as you make your bed, so shall you lie. That is taking ownership of the choices one made. This is where it has brought me. What do I do with it now? Mm-hmm. And only you could exercise that willpower to say, I'm going to make a change.
And thank you so much. And we are going to carry on this conversation next week, Wednesday. For those of you who would like to tune in, ask your questions. We want your questions. We know we have a silent listenership, but let us know. Other than, I know we get the comments of great job and we love this segment, etc. But let us know what you'd like us to discuss as well. So feel free to call us at 222-3104. Give us your messages on Facebook, and you can contact Belgroves as well. Dr. Rouse, you have that number to share with us for Belgroves?
Yeah. 223-2178. 223-2178. That's Belgroves.
Thank you so much, and we will continue this conversation, and we wish you well until we speak again.
You're most welcome, and thank you to our listeners as well. I hope they feel a bit better.
We are Heartbeat Radio. 104.1 FM radio for women and the men who love them. The time is now 7 minutes after the 11 o'clock hour, and we've got lots more music coming your way this hour, and also today is your Motivational Wednesday. This is Rehanna Khan here keeping you company until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Don't touch your dial.
We plan when we get married. We plan when we buy a car, a house, and when we have our children. We even plan how we save and when we want to retire. Throughout life, we pre-plan for most important things. Doesn't it make sense to do the same for our funeral arrangements? It may seem unpleasant, but it's just good planning. With expert advice from Belgroves' family of professionals, they can help. Call or visit them first in San Fernando, Point Fortin, Chaguanas, Trin City, and Tobago. Or check their website, www.belgroves.com. Or call them 223-2178, 223-2178.